Hey y'all, Jae Wilson from Onyx Reporting here, coming to you to share with you how you can change the sign of your income statement accounts. Now this request actually comes from a client of mine. They said, you know, Jay, first off, when I go to my finance cube in my standard Jet Enterprise project and I drop in the amount field, it's just zero. What's that all about? And I said, well, think about double entry accounting. That's actually the way double entry accounting works, right? All of your transactions should net out to zero. Otherwise, you've got a problem. And they begrudgingly accepted my response, and then they said, okay, fine, let me pull in my chart of accounts and let's see what that looks like. So here we are. Here's my chart of accounts, and yeah, everything nets out to zero, but when I slice by the account dimension, I see numbers, but what's this all about? My revenue or my sales is negative and my costs are positive. I know that's how accounting works, but can we invert the sign? And so that's what I'm here to share with you guys. I'm going to show you guys a really quick solution for that. I'm going to give you the quick and easy dirty fix. I'll give you the answer first and then kind of explain how it works later. So those of you who want the quick fix can just peace out early, and who want the longer explanation, stick around. Okay. The first thing we need is a rule. How do you know when to invert the assign on the amount field? And we're going to use the income balance dimension level to differentiate between the accounts that we want to invert the sign or not, right? Basically, I'm going to just write it here as an if statement. If you're in, if the GL account number is a income statement account, then invert sign. Else, stay the same. Yeah, a little pseudocode there. If the GL account number is an income statement account, invert the sign. If it's a balance sheet account, leave it alone. Okay. In order to do this in the cubes, we're not going to use an if-then or any sort of case statement like you would in SQL. We're going to use a scoping command. And what a scoping command does is it says, take a slice of the cubes. So the first slice is we're going to take the amount measure. Then take that slice and slice it again by the GL account dimension, where the income balance is a 1. And then take that entire slice and keep measures.amount, so don't change anything. Now if the income balance dimension level is a 0, then change the slice and multiply it by -1. I'm going to go into greater depth about what I mean by cells and slices and cube stuff when we get to the explanation of what scoping really does. But for those of you looking for the quick and dirty fix, basically you copy this code and you paste it into the Jet Data Manager. We're going to go ahead and under script actions, we're going to right click here, we're going to add a script command and paste it on in. And every script command has to have a name. We're just going to call it scope. And then the last thing we're going to do here under the finance cube, I'll right click and reapply calculated measures and script commands. When I come into my pivot table and refresh, we'll see that the signs have in fact been inverted. My revenue is a positive number, my cost is a negative number. We're super excited, but this does have ramifications when I take out my account dimension. Now, technically, the amount column violates GAAP, or it violates, basic accounting rules because it doesn't net out to 0, which is fine as long as you show your chart of accounts, then it makes sense. Me personally, I would recommend having 2 amount dimensions, one where we have that scoping rule applied, and the other one where it still nets out to 0 the way it's supposed to. So that's the quick and dirty answer, how to change the sign of your income statement accounts. Again, what we did is we took this scope statement that redefines the measurement, or redefines the cell calculation at the intersection of amount and where the income balance is 0. And we copied and pasted said scope command as a script command. And then instead of deploying and executing, we just reapply calculated measures and script commands. Okay, that's the process. Now, if you want to understand how it all works, we need to really kind of tune in or fine-tune our understanding of what a cube is and what a cube does. Okay? Now, someone may have told you at some point that a cube aggregates data. Right? Part of the promise of why our cubes are so much faster than reporting directly against nav or directly against the data warehouse is our cube pre-aggregates the data. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's imagine your GL entry has many transactions. And when I say many, we're talking in the tunes of millions, right? For, let's say, 400 million transactions. And if I want to calculate the net change of an account, or if I want to calculate the balance of an account, I literally have to sum up millions of transactions, which is not ideal. That takes time. So when we say a cube aggregates data, what we're saying is that a cube consists of basically two major parts, a measure and a set of dimensions. And the data is pre-aggregated across those measures and dimensions. In other words, what must you have to define a cube? You must have at least one measure, and you must have at least one dimension. Now let's consider the one measure, the amount column. Okay, so that's our measurement, which nets out to 0. And then we have our GL account dimension, which let's say has 50 values in it. So when we pre-aggregate the cubes, what we're saying is we're calculating cells for each combination of unique value. So if I've got 50 GL account dimensions, 50 unique GL account values, then I will actually have 50 cells, one cell for each unique GL account value, which is a far cry from 400 million. And that's part of why the cube runs so much faster. But if my cube is aggregated to the dimension level, then you could never ask, well, how much did I do this year? How much did I do last year? How much did I do in the last 5 days? Because the granularity of the cube just says I have one cell for each GL account number. So if you expand your cube to include a date dimension, let's say there's 365 days in a year, you've got 10 years worth of data, you now have 3,650 unique date values. So how many cells do I have now? Well, now I've got 1 times 50 times 3,650. I have 182,500 cells. And while that's a lot more than 50, that's also a lot less than 400 million, right? And so now the most granular level, or each cell contains the aggregation of what was the amount on a day for a GL account. And that's, you know, great, but I still can't answer to whom, you know, who caused the transaction, or what was the document number. I can't drill down to the entry number because, again, all of this is aggregated to 182,000 cells, which just are at the granularity of GL account and date. So, I mean, obviously the story continues. As you expand your dimension to include more documents, right, then obviously the number of cells increases. Okay, all right. I mean, this is approximate. You don't really have 4,000. Anyway, you get the idea of what we mean by cells and slices, I hope. So here, when we circle back to our actual scoping statement, the first scoping statement says, all right, choose the set of cells that correspond with amount. Now in our previous example that we're doing over here, we only have one measure, but we could easily have a second measure for, let's say, budget amount, right? Which would take the total number of measures up to 2, which would of course double the number of cells we have, right? But anyway, so the first thing we say is, all right, let's choose a slice. So I choose the amount slice. Now, I don't want to redefine the values for everything, but I could. I could just say, for the amount slice, this equals 10. And what this would do is it would literally say every value for every cell in the amount slice is equal to 10 or 15 or 22. And that's obviously not what I want. We said, well, we want to differentiate between when the GL account number is a 1 or a 0. So we slice it even further, and we say for this slice, do this calculation. And once again, we could have swapped in a 10 or a 15 or some other static value. Now, as you get further and further into your slices, it's just like with parentheses. You have an open parentheses and a closed parentheses. So when I select the slice for measures.amount, I have my matching end scope. And when I select the slice for the GL account balance is 1, I also have a matching end scope. And then within it all, I use this equals, and then what is your calculation goes here. I could have done, 10, 15 measures.amount. I could have done a completely different calculation. You'll see scope statements kind of used when you're doing, when you use different date hierarchies, but that's another conversation for another time. If we wanted to do the same thing for budgets, right, we would just copy and paste our scope statement and say, all right, this time I want to select the budget amount slice, and I still have my income balance, and again I just want to change the calculation for budget amount to invert the sign. And then again, you could take this entire hunk of code, make sure that you have matching opening and close scope statements, make sure each statement ends with a semicolon, otherwise you get all sorts of interesting errors. And then again, you can just take this, copy, and paste it into your scope statement. Again, you can reapply your calculations. Stay with me. Oops, what did I do wrong? What did I misspell? Oh, it's just called budget, not budget amount. My mistake. Okay. Let's try it again. Success. And now, same story, the signs of my budgets have been inverted. Which you can't tell because I don't have the original budget amount, but there you go. In any event, this little presentation was showing you how to change the sign of just your income statement accounts by using a scope statement. My name is Jae Wilson. You can find me at jae@onyxreporting.com. Thanks so much for joining us. Catch us later. Cheers.